Hello everyone, my name is Romain Nith. I'm really excited today to talk about this new project called SplitBody, done in collaboration with Ho and my advisor Pedro Lopes at the University of Chicago. So let's first start by taking a look at this person. Here we have a person that's doing two different tasks at the same time. She's trying to write an essay and cook caramel at the same time. So for those who don't know, caramel is basically you melting sugar in a pan, and you have to constantly stir. If you stop stirring, the sugar can build up and it can actually caramelize and burn, and that's an unwanted outcome, right? So let's see how she does with those two tasks by herself. All right, so it was a mess, right? She got overwhelmed, and the caramel started to burn, and yeah. So let's see what we can do by adding muscle stimulation. So here she's wearing a device on her left arm, which is also this one. Basically, this device sends an electrical impulse into the muscle that causes an involuntary muscle contraction. For demonstration, here I have a switch. If I press this switch, it's not working. Can you try over there? There you go. Try again. Try again. There you go. So she's controlling my arm. So this is muscle stimulation in a nutshell. So by doing this, we can actually automate the stirring gesture. So she turns it on and starts stirring. And I can do the same thing. So here I have some waffle batter, and go for it, you. And she's controlling the stimulation is controlling my arm. So here, this movement is not being made by me, it's made by muscle stimulation. And that allows me to continue presenting. So, so you can actually shut this thing whenever she wants. I'm gonna keep going. So again, here we're using muscle stimulation to split the body in two, with one side being controlled by the muscle stimulation, and the other one, the user is controlling it. And that allows them to free up their mind. And in this case, she can actually just focus on writing the essay itself, while her arm is still making the caramel. We ended up making actual real caramel. We tried it, and it tastes just like caramel. So let's take a step back and look at existing work in muscle stimulation. So muscle stimulation have been used for multiple occasions. For instance, you can learn you can play the instruments, so the muscle stimulation can play the guitar for you. You can also spell American Sign Language automatically. And you can also use it to enhance human skills such as playing golf or speeding up your reaction time. Now, all these systems have one thing in common though. They focus on a task that is in the foreground, meaning that if I'm playing the guitar, the muscle stimulation is playing the guitar for me. But in our case, we're actually putting the muscle stimulation in the background, a task that the user is not attending to. And for those who are familiar with muscle stimulation, it can be very distracting. It causes a lot of tingling sensation. It's a foreign movement. And your attention usually goes directly back to where the limb is being actuated, and it's very distracting. So in this context of multitasking, if I'm saying that you can actually focus on another task, it begs the question, like, does this even work? So let's investigate. We conducted a user study where participants were asked to do two different tasks at the same time. So on the left-hand side, they're doing a movement task. So the movement goes as follows. The participants have to go up, down, left, right, and then the order flips. Down, up, right, left. So there's a bit of short-term memory in play. And they have to do this task while also doing a cognitive task, a two-back, used in neuroscience quite a bit. So for those who don't know, we flash letters on the screen. Here we imagine the sequence A, B, and if the third letter is a C, this is not an end-back. But if the fourth letter is a B, now this is an end-back. So the user have to constantly say if the new letter that is being shown is an end-back or not, all while doing the gesture task. And we do this in two conditions. The first condition is with the muscle stimulation, automating the gesture. And the other one, they have to do it by themselves. And we found out that the score of both tasks added together is much better with SplitBody, almost twice. And one would say, like, of course the movement task is going to be good, right? Because the muscle stimulation is doing for you. So yes, of course, SplitBody allow you to perform that gesture task a lot better, almost 2.5 times. But if we go back to the distraction part, if the muscle stimulation is tingling, then the second task then you should be distracted by the muscle stimulation. But in this case, we saw that people were actually able to focus on the secondary task, the two back, the cognitive loading one, and it increased by 1.3 times. We also asked them to fill out the NASA TLX score, and we saw that SplitBody had a much lower perceived workload, and in almost by 1.5 times. And all the other metrics within NASA TLX also decreased. Notably, the mental demand and the physical demand decreased. So now that we know that we can multitask better with muscle stimulation, what can we actually do with this? Well, we can draw with both hands. So here on the left side, the muscle stimulation is being actuated, is moving the left hand, and the right hand is drawing by themselves. So here the user is drawing in both. So we start by drawing the contour of a cell, and the user is going to hit the switch, activating the SplitBody, which allows them to color, while at the same time they can continue drawing the rest of the sketch. Same thing. It can also be used to play multiple instruments at once. Here, Aki, one of the postdocs at our lab, is playing two instruments, so the drum pad and the synth. He turns on the muscle stimulation, and he's going to play the drum beat. And now he can play the synth by himself. So we're splitting the body in two, with muscle stimulation on the left and himself on the right. He can also flip the roles. So now the muscle stimulation is playing the synth, and he plays the drum pad. You can also play one instrument requiring multi-limb. Here, Hunter, one of the high school students that worked with us, is playing the drum. So let's see what he does without muscle stimulation. So he's learning a new score. He's trying to play the hi-hat, adds the drum kick, and then play the snare. But it's very complicated. There's too much information, so he gets very confused. So what if we add muscle stimulation? So again, split the body, with one half being automated and the other one controlled. So the muscle stimulation here is going to start by hitting the hi-hat for them. Then we add the drum with the muscle stimulation. And then they can actually play the snare by themselves. So they just focus on the snare, not the hi-hat, not the kick drum. So today we showed a novel interactive system where we split the body in two. So with one side being automated with the muscle stimulation, and the other side being user controlled. There are, of course, other methods to assist users with daily tasks. So today we showed how muscle stimulation can do that, but one can also use an exoskeleton, a robotic limb, or even tools. But there's one thing that, but these projects usually focus on the interaction, not on the benefit of the users. So for instance, they don't really ask the question, do they reduce the mental effort, which I'm sure they do to some extent. And if so, how much benefit do users, do the users benefit from it? And this is exactly what we showed today with SplitBody. But there's a key difference between all these systems and the muscle stimulation. These systems are external, whereas muscle stimulation is internal. We're moving your body with your muscle. And this difference is key because you are involved in the process of the task. For instance, if a robotic limb would do it for you, you have no information unless you look at it. And this opens up to a lot of exciting questions, such as how much benefit do the users get by automating their own body? For instance, if I'm cooking the caramel, for instance, do I feel the texture change, more resistance going on? And if I'm playing the drums, can I actually learn to drum better with muscle stimulation? And this is important because in the day where, in an age where everyone's trying to automate our daily routine with external tools, we're trying to do the same, but with internal tools, with your own body, and see what type of benefits one can gain from this. Thank you for listening to the talk. Please check out our paper. We also have the demo coming out right after this session, and one at the job fair. So please come say hi. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Karosky from Princeton University. Great presentation, it's really cool. So what's really interesting here compared to the work that you showed is that the person is not attending to the secondary task, right? It's just happening in the foreground. But I can imagine that being potentially more dangerous because I'm not actually attending to what I'm doing. If I'm dealing with, let's say, hot sugar in this case, or if I'm working with someone that's nearby, I might hurt myself or hurt them. So can you talk a little bit about what you've done or what you plan to do to make sure the interaction is reliable, secure, and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. So there are different ways to dismiss the muscle stimulation when you don't want it. Here in this scenario, we use a switch. So for instance, if you have a free limb, so for instance here, I'm using my right hand, I can hit the a kill switch that would stop the stimulation completely. But there are other methods to do it too. For instance, in my advisor's previous work, he designed a zone where the muscle stimulation can only work when the user is in this zone. We can also use tools. For instance, if the user is holding the tool, then the muscle stimulation starts. We can also, if we measure that the user's intent is going against the muscle stimulation, we can also stop the muscle stimulation. So there are actively a bunch of ways we can do to have the user still in control of the movement. Yeah. Thank you.
So I feel like I have to ask the Rick and Morty question. There's an episode of Rick and Morty where they automate themselves while they're sleeping to make apps and then they get ripped them. So could you do this? You said this. It's not experiences that interrupt. Could you do this while you sleep without you awaking?
That's a good question. I believe my advisor did look into this, but there was no strong evidence yet. But it's definitely an interesting topic, and we may pursue that later. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Nithing from University of Toronto. Thank you so much for this cool talk, and congratulations for the award. I'm wondering, like, how much could you push, like, how precise the sensors going to be, like, the muscle simulations are going to be, and then is it possible to make people actually become ambidextrous, maybe? Yeah,
so there's a bunch of work also measuring the dexterity of muscle stimulation. So all these previous works have evaluated the precision. Here we don't really look at that because we already assume that all the things that you can do with muscle stimulation is completely translated here. And now we just put the stimulation in the background while the user can focus on the foreground. And about gaining experience, being able to be ambidextrous, I think that's where the learning part comes to play. And that's something that we're looking into actively. We went to a couple studies, a couple pilots, and people seem to actually get more motor skills by using muscle stimulation. Yeah.
Gloria Mark, University of California, Irvine. So we know from decades of research that multitasking causes stress. And so I'm wondering to what extent people might feel more stressed when they're trying to do these two tasks. Yeah. So even though you're switching from voluntary to involuntary, might there still be stress involved, right? You're worried about stirring, about getting it right, about not burning. So there's still some cognitive effort that's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. So in our study, when they were so both tasks are very hard to do. Even by themselves, they are hard to do. So when they were of course stressed, and they all told me like, yeah, this is really stressful, even with the muscle stimulation and without it. But we're just measuring the delta between with and without, and we saw that muscle stimulation is able to help you decrease that stress, and that's all that is shown in the NASA TLX. And I also got a couple quotes. I'm not sure if they're directly aimed at that, but they were able to completely forget that the muscle stimulation was happening in the background, and they were just focusing on the in this case, the two back, and it worked pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, let's Thanks again for the very great and cool presentation. And the last presentation